Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kevin, for bringing us together. The Cal State Entertainment Alliance is a program, it's essentially a grant program put together by the headquarters of the California State University system. So we have 23 campuses in our system in California. I'm sure some of you, Marquita, are you based in California? Yeah. So I teach at San Francisco State and I live in San Francisco. So that's my home campus. I've been teaching here since 2003. My area of teaching is in broadcast news. So I teach radio, television, video production. I also teach live streaming and like on camera media performance type classes. So my professional background is in broadcast journalism, radio, TV journalism. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I took on this grant program. The whole point of the program is to bring our campuses and the entertainment industry more meaningfully together. And so we fund workshops on subjects that our campuses may not be teaching quite yet. And so that we want our curriculum to stay up to date with industry trends. We want what we're teaching to be relevant to students who are graduating into an industry that's rapidly changing. And so that's really the whole point of our program, is to make sure that there's better alignment between the industry and our programs. So we work with, we like to call ourselves discipline agnostic. We are not just tied to the entertainment arts. We don't just work with film, TV, or performing arts. We work with everybody. So computer science, business, literally anybody in our system with an interest in the entertainment industry, regardless of their major, we can help get them started. So we have a couple of programs that do that. We provide internship credit, for example, for very low cost, because I don't like the fact that students get charged to get credit for a summer internship. So we have a program where they can enroll and take an online class and get that credit. And we also have an advisory board, which Kevin serves on. And that board gets together and talks about what's going on in the industry, what does it mean for higher education? And what we try to do is influence decision makers in our system to be like with it, you know, like if you're making hiring decisions, maybe you should hire somebody who can teach, you know, virtual reality, augmented reality. Maybe you should be thinking about teaching classes in blockchain, you know, the technologies that are evolving. We need to evolve along with that. And I think a lot of hiring decisions that are made, for me, my job is to like shake a dean or a department chair and be like, no, we don't need another research person. We need somebody, you know, who can teach students skills that are immediately transferable to the workforce. So that's really what we do. I'll pop the link to our program in the chat so you guys can take a better look at what we do. And then this year, our board meeting, instead of it being in person, is obviously going to be virtual. We usually meet together in Los Angeles. But on April 28th, we are coming together to bring together industry and decision makers in our system to talk about trends, to talk about things that matter, so that they can get a sense of where we're at in the industry. So we're bringing together a lot of partners. Dolby is our main sponsor at the moment. So they're going to be talking a lot about their audio technology, what that means for content creators and storytellers, but also what does it mean for jobs in like computer science and on the technical end as well. We're talking to Adobe also, so they can talk about their tools in storytelling. And we're also working with the Hospitality and Tourism Alliance to talk about how do you produce virtual events? How is this notion of virtual learning changing? what does that mean for faculty like myself who want to spend the summer trying to figure out what next year is going to be like? Is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be in person? For me personally, teaching television production, it's been very difficult without studios. So without access to facilities and without access to our equipment, it's been quite a challenge, but we figured it out. We did a live newscast using phones and using a virtual switcher. So we just pivoted to virtual production pretty quickly. And my students got jobs. They got job offers even based on what they were able to do virtually. So that's the win for me, is when our students get jobs and they can say, yeah, I did XYZ. And I can do that for you, Mr. Employer or Mrs. Employer. They can go to a news director and say, yeah, I can tell stories with my phone. So that's really what we do. And I can certainly tell you more about the event and more about our programs, but I think I'm going to stop there and just get to know you guys as well.
Great, that's a great table setter. So Ted, before I introduce you, I want to introduce Marquita, who is a superstar. She just doesn't know it yet. But Marquita was introduced to me by an instructor at Santa Monica College, where she's currently enrolled. But it doesn't tell the story of how and why she and I are embarking on an opportunity to get to learn how to work on a mentee-mentor relationship. And Marquita, I want you to give no more than 60 seconds of where you came from educationally, actually geographically, and where you believe there's some intersectionality between the things that you've heard and listened to in the last 3 to 4 Zooms, and what you'd like to contribute moving forward to anything you've just heard Dino mention about the California State University Entertainment Alliance. I'm also going to really wrap it up with, at the end of this session, I'm going to challenge everybody on the call to think about, in a perfect world, what could we offer up as the panel of all panels to really have not only social impact, but to provide some real case study for what we can do to get prepared for fall semester 2021, whatever we know about what's going on today. So Marquita, with all that in mind, can you give us a brief on the who, why, where, and how of Marquita?
He loves doing this to me, like sets me up. Well, I'm Marquilla Starr. I always say I'm from Watts, Compton, because I kind of lived on the border. My sister lives in Compton, my parents live in Watts. And I went to Cal Poly Pomona, got my degree in biotechnology. Yay! And I actually almost like double majored in digital media the first time around. So the problem at Cal Poly though is that they didn't really, we had fashion, we had theater, but we didn't actually have digital media. And so I was like, it was something I was into, and all my science friends kind of made fun of me about it. And then all my artsy friends were like, why are you doing like the science thing? Like, I was in between worlds. I was an outcast even then. I was like on the edge. And so I had humanities. I'm like, how do I piece this together? And so I actually worked with the dean at the time. Forgive me, I don't remember her name. It's been a while. And we came up with this idea of we're going to piece it together. So I ended up with a minor in it that we pieced together. And with her blessing, she was our advisor, I founded a digital media club. And so I was like the founder and the first president of it. I was real active on campus. I was like president on multicultural councils and stuff like that. Yeah, so real active on campus. And then, graduate, recession's going strong. And I thought to be just practical, and I got a job in higher education for a while. And so that desire to create and do digital media and tell stories. And I was in a lull, and I actually started live tweeting The Walking Dead. and slowly it like became a thing. And so I got a pretty popular account, and then I started doing like covering events and talking about comics, which is something I like to read. And so I was covering events, writing about comics, and doing reviews and stuff like that. The internet, right? I'm big on the internet and stuff like that. And eventually this kind of rolled and snowballed all together where I felt like I wanted to transition out and kind of go back to the things I was kind of pursuing in undergrad. And that's what made me, that's how I found my way to Santa Monica. And I'm a Promo Pathways Fellow, which is like a writing, producing, editing program that I completed successfully. And I said, well, I want to go on and just finish up the digital media certification here. And then my plan is to actually, I've been actually looking at San Francisco State because I'm interested in one of your MFAs. and that's exactly why I want to go to San Francisco State, is for all the things you were talking about. Like when I look at school, when I look at a program, when I join something, I'm looking for value. And that's often what I'm trying to give when I'm reporting, when I'm covering something, when I choose to get involved with something. It has to have value that I think people can take and do something with. I think that will bring people, but you also have to entertain people to inform them most times, especially now with everybody's attention spans getting shorter and shorter. Myself, I sometimes struggle. I'm like, this is only 3 minutes, focus. And but I find a way to do it. But yeah, so I was like, everything you were saying resonated with me because I've already been checking out your program. And because I'm of the internet, I was forged of the internet. I feel like I want to go to a Bain speech right now. Ted gets me. I just, virtual productions and like how to make that, because that was like always my thing when I was working with like the internet, big Twitter accounts and stuff like that. A lot of the digital media, newsletters, magazines, geek this, nerd that. That was like, how do we engage people and build this community, not just across the country, but across the globe and stuff like that. And I was like a part of that when Twitter was just taking off and stuff like that. And that was really fun. It's a lot different now. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad. I was like, I miss the old days. But yeah, that's mostly like kind of like a internet obsessed, comic books, pop culture obsessed nerd. That's me.
I love it. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Please, I popped my email in the chat. Let's talk offline. Let's do a Zoom together. I could tell you all about, I could talk you into a grad program or out of it as you wish.
Well, you know what? I'm big on like being honest and truthful about things.
Exactly.
Like, the thing is like, it's like I remember like trying to produce projects. Like I love making content even there, and I have all these cool ideas about like goofy things we could do on the internet and like blow up on the internet. I was like always had a master plan. I'm like, we're gonna blow up, y'all. Just follow me, and like how these fun ideas I want to do with my friends. And so they hear the pitch, they hear the idea, and they're like, yeah, we totally want to be involved. And the thing is, to do anything you love is still work. You still got to work it out, and you still and when that truth hit them, they're like, wait, I thought this was gonna be fun the whole time. I'm like, it is fun. You have to do this take for like the 7th time because you didn't get it right the first 6 times.
Totally. And I hear what you said about value too. And that's why we got to talk about like, what's your ROI on your MFA? Do you really want to go there? What are you going to get out of it? Because that's
right. I could discuss that with you because I definitely have some things in mind that I want to get. I've been balancing it if it's right for me. I've been talking to other professors and people I know. I actually there's a chair of film at LACC.
Jen Vaughn.
Yes. And I actually got a chance to talk to her. And
Jen and I worked together.
Okay, she sung your praises
at SF State.
So I've been looking around. I'm not afraid to reach out to people and say hi.
That's great. I'm so happy to meet you.
Friends.
But that's for TED. If you don't already know, that is the value proposition: is that we provide accessible public higher education. We should have the lowest cost at the highest value. We should be able to provide as close as we can to like USC and LMU and all the privates and Chapman, and you should not have to spend $250,000 on, an entertainment arts degree. And our current tuition is 11,000. What are you getting for that 11,000? You should be ready to hit the ground running. When we prepare you, like, these are our clients, and we want to provide highest value at lowest cost. That's our thing. And that's why I love teaching at Essex State. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
Wow. Well, Marquita, thank you for that 60-second introduction. But we're gonna, and again, that's why she's a superstar. You can't contain a superstar to 60 seconds. But I challenged her anyway. It's called challenge-based learning, right? So, without further ado, I want to introduce my good friend Ted. And we really had intended to talk about some other things, but I'm going to roll with this thing. And
I know I totally crossed your meeting. I'm sorry. We'll try to be fast.
Well, yeah, well, it's impossible. I mean, we're always going to try to bring dynamic personalities into mix. But, again, what you get out of it is really what you manage. And so I'm going to, with the 35 minutes we have with Ted left, I want to try to see if we can figure out what can we learn about Ted's current initiatives and some of the things we can integrate that could possibly show up April 28th or maybe beyond. So Ted, if you can, just try and give us some understanding of your why and how maybe you can kind of be the alchemist, if you can, on all the things that you've learned about me and the two people who we've just met on the phone, on the Zoom rather. How can you bring anything that could allow us to help make a really good gumbo out of all this good stuff?
Yeah. So quick intro on myself. Again, Ted Lai. I work with Apple as an education leadership executive. So fancy title for basically I work with educational leaders. Typically, I'm working at the K-12 level, but I've also done a little bit of collaboration at the higher education levels as well. Our general role at K-12 especially is with schools and districts that maybe are bringing in technology, helping them rethink what education looks like. If you've got a camera, if you've got a microphone, how are you integrating multimedia into the learning? Not so that it feels like it's an extra, like kids are doing, visual and performing arts as an extra on the side, but how does that get integrated into the learning process? So I do a lot of work with people at the principal level and above so that they start to understand what types of new opportunities they can provide for their students and how to scaffold it by supporting teachers to get to that point where they're letting go of the classroom a little bit and allowing students to grow and discover. One of the things that I've worked on at Apple is Everyone Can Create. I was part of the original team designing and conceiving of it. And this is a 4-part content piece that really looks at the skills of video, music, drawing, and photo, and what skills help you feel proficient in it. So we worked with professional artists and we kind of scaffolded it along with the easier ideas to the much harder. And then we created a tie-in for schools on, okay, what does this look like in the classroom then? Like if this unit on doing an interview is here and it talks about writing good questions and prepping your interview subject, how could that now be put into the curriculum if you're teaching history or language arts or science, etc.? So it was really a way to make sure that learning starts to look different because, honestly, we're now at a point, especially with learning at home, where most kids have a device. Most schools have had to resort to getting a device for every kid, not always the most, amazing device, but they all have a device. So, are we still teaching school the way we used to teach it 100 years ago? But now it's online. And the answer is, yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. So the other thing that I try to work into what I do is think about the vertical articulation. We know, especially in California, when you look at the Otis report on the creative economy, we know that California and especially Southern California, the creative economy drives so much And that's not just people who are in visual and performing arts, but it's the accountants, it's the computer programmers who do things adjacent to the arts and help support that economy and benefit from it. So if we're going to be promoting that and preparing our students to be college and career ready, well, this has to be one of the options. But at a more fundamental level, what are we doing pedagogically to shift how we're preparing students in middle school and elementary school so that they can take advantage of some of these programs in high school, community colleges, Cal State, etc. So it's been a really fascinating thing to be working on, and that's where some of the cross section of my work and Kevin's work has happened, because we want there to be a lot more opportunities for our students to really express their knowledge and to be creative and find their passion and talk about it. I mean, honestly, listening to Marquita, I get so inspired, but there are so many kids out there who don't, right? Who just, they may love it, but they don't try to do anything with it. I mean, that's why one of the things I do for fun is I have a podcast with my younger daughter, who, by the way, younger, she's 21 now, but we do a podcast called Asian American History 101. And one of the reasons was Asian American history is not taught in school here. Not really. I mean, we learn about Chinese at the railroads, Chinese mining for gold, and the Japanese were interned. And that's pretty much it in K-12 education. You have to go to higher ed to start taking an Asian American history class to learn a little bit more. And even then, it often kind of skates over a lot. So we create our podcast just for fun. But, we've always encouraged her and her older sister to express themselves creatively and figure out what their passion is and to put it out there. But I know that not everyone does that, right? And so as an educator, as a lifelong educator, from having taught, from being an instructor at the college level, to being an administrator, how do we make sure that it's now a systemic change? So that's a lot of what I've done in the past, really quickly, and where it's funny because when Kevin and I talk, we have ideas for how we could do something and maybe start to change opinions and minds at K-12, at higher ed, but can't do it alone. And so how do we find the right allies in this to build on and amplify the messages of each other so that what we come out with are students, learners, let's just say learners, because really it's everyone's a learner. Learners who are more willing to enact change and utilize creativity to be part of the solution.
Wow.
I'll pause there.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I wanted to bring Ted up to speed on is that I've had conversations in trying to rebirth Heartbeat training at the Heartbeat Studios. Dina and Ted have seen that facility. Marquita, you haven't. But a lot's changed in our world since, Heartbeat training and the studio and all the physical assets were developed. But we're going to be speaking to a gentleman who runs the Laugh Out Loud Heartbeat Productions strategy for the business of Kevin Hart. And they have still continued to thrive and develop a bigger footprint without the studio being kind of the centerpiece for their growth. So what I want to do is I want to find a way to try and create a digital version of the training program that will provide some exposure to the way that Laugh Out Loud Heartbeat does what they do to try and find talent to bring into their culture. They're currently at this point looking for 8 employees that they just posted on LinkedIn. None of them are really entry-level positions, but I know that they have a willingness to create some bridge to some end state that will allow students to become part of their talent development program. So we haven't created an ask yet for Jeff, But at some point, I believe that organically we can give Jeff a chance to provide some insight as to what can we do to merge what he can share with us about the business of Kevin Hart with what they're currently doing to look for students like Marquita to help them with their business model and their culture. And I think this could be an interesting way to, instead of just having a discussion, we can really look at providing a case study. And it could be the kind of case study that, you know, if we put our heads together, we could really come up with some way of scratching the surface of something we never got a chance to do with the physical heartbeat. So I'm going to toss to Dina any thing that I've said that kind of sparked some thoughts about the panel that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there are, you know, actual job opportunities, I think it would be really helpful to hear from the hiring manager about, you know, what is their vision for the people that are going to work there? What do they need in terms of hard skills, creative skills, and soft skills too, because students don't learn that enough, in my opinion. Yeah, and I think that students and faculty need to know what employers are looking for today, because some of the things that employers are looking for never change, right? We're all looking for hardworking, motivated people who are willing to learn and willing to just roll up their sleeves and get the hard work done. That doesn't change. But in terms of, you know, let's get really deep into, like, you know, what software are they using? What kind of computers do they have? What kind of content are they creating? What are they looking to do? What is their vision over the next year or two? And then it's like the practical questions: how do you bring people safely back into production spaces? You know, I've been to this space, right? Can they safely start productions again? Are they going to be requiring vaccinations? Are they going to, what do their protocols look like? I have so many questions in terms of like how we can set this up, because that kind of information does transfer back into what an educator needs to be telling their students.
Yes, I mean, and that I just put in the chat box the post for the 8 jobs that they're currently looking to fill these positions. And that's a great way to think about using this as a chance to look at the anatomy of the process of making content, distributing content, monetizing content, and all the different archetypes of people that will help them in this quest to either succeed or not in getting better at competing for this talent pool. And all of the positions that they have currently open are just a drop in the bucket for all the people that they employ or subcontract to make all this stuff happen. So again, the kind of questions that we would ask Jeff would be baked into this exchange and this discussion. But I think because he's such a guy that's heavy on technology and a futurist, he would probably really get more out of talking to someone like Ted, who can describe to him how much more capable these learners and these potential talent pools are, and meeting him where he would want them to be if he knew that they had the opportunity to pedagogy that unlocks these learners into learning these things, potentially in classrooms, but sometimes out of the classroom. And I don't know how many of the people that Dina is going to put us in front of have actually ever heard someone talk about unlocking the classroom or unlocking the learning so that students somehow can do some DIY stuff and start to understand that Yeah, we could provide you an on-ramp, but some of this learning that Ted's talking about is going to really match up pretty well with some of these hires from Laugh Out Loud, and going to make a really good match potentially for education to workforce to placement happen for us. So, anybody have anything to say about the outcome for talking about these kind of things on the 28th?
Yeah, you know, it didn't feel like too long ago that we were talking about backpack journalism, and that was such a
Oh,
new thing. You know, but at the same time now it feels like with the rise of the individual creator, it's not that backpack journalism has gone away, but that, you know, so many more have access to that. I kind of feel like it's um, back in the old days when iMovie first came out. You know, Steve Jobs used to talk about how we wanted to give access to the idea of movie making to everyone. And a lot of people hated that. A lot of people were like, no, you need to go to school for this amount of time to really get an eye for telling story. And I think that there's a lot of value in that too. At the same time, there's also value in just getting your stories out there. So it's, you know, when you talk about things to bring up in the panel, I think that so much of what we've been talking about here in terms of feeling that empowerment to create is essential. The soft skills that Dina mentioned. I mean, one of the things that I talk about a lot are those skills because, you know, when you look at the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs survey, I mean, they're surveying businesses every year about what types of skills are you looking for. And you know, the critical skills that these businesses are looking for by the year 2022 are things like creativity, originality, initiative, emotional intelligence, leadership skills. These are not things that we teach in school typically, but how do we really create a shift now where K-20, we now think through lesson design, project design, so that you're building in the opportunity to have leadership skills flourish as you're doing a project, as you're doing an assignment. And I think that that's the excitement I have with the future of education, the future of learning, the future of trying to get arts to be more fully integrated with what we do on a daily basis to build up those quote unquote soft skills.
Yeah, I think soft skills are super important, and experiential learning is super important. Like this week we're on spring break, but my students uh, scheduled a meeting with a client that they were going to pitch to for sponsorship. And I'm like, yeah, it's spring break, but I'm going to see who's going to show up. Like, this is an hour of your time on Zoom. And you could potentially get sponsorship funds for the esports tournament that you guys are producing in the live streaming class. It's like part of it is just showing up and putting in the extra work and not being like, oh, it's my spring break, I'm tuned out, you know? Yeah, I agree with the soft skills, and this is a tiny tangent, but you mentioned the backpack journalism. Now the thing, because I'm teaching live streaming, is sort of moving into unscripted content, right? So you have a whole bunch of scripted content, but what about sharing your experience as you're experiencing it, right? Now we have these IRL, which is in real life, backpacks where you have a camera and you can be walking around, you know, live streaming your experience. How is this going to change the future of storytelling when it's happening right now on YouTube Live or on Twitch? Yeah, so talk about backpack journalism. We've like taken that up. We've leveled that one up, you know, pretty intense. I mean, obviously the production values are totally different with live. You know, the camera's shaky, it's terrible. The audio is awful. But the point is that you can be there live in real time, experiencing some of these events that are happening. And there's a certain, I don't know, special experience around live streaming. So I think to bring us back to, the panel and what we want to talk about, we definitely want to keep emphasizing the soft skills. You can't talk about that enough because they just don't know. And we're talking about a student population, right? Marquita went to Cal Poly. I noticed, Ted, in your LinkedIn that you also taught at Fullerton. All right, so who our student population is. They didn't grow up with parents who are going to necessarily teach them that this is how you deal with a client, or this is how you make a presentation, or this is how you walk into a job interview, And I think so that's super important, but then also opening their eyes to the possibilities that are out there is super important. And then the third thing is, what's next? What are we coming out of COVID looking to change or looking to do a little differently?
Right. And to that point, Ted, Dina asked me to submit a title for the panel, and it's almost changing by the hour, not by the day, as to what can we really look at as our North Star for being invited into the panel and the work that we're currently doing with community college students. And I'm still working with some 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in LAUSD. And I want to be able to have a longer tail discussion after April 28th about something that Ted's coined. I don't know if he coined it, but it's called challenge-based learning. I think everybody else calls it project-based learning. And Ted, if you can, what is challenge-based learning for you today? Oh, you're muted, Ted.
I do that on purpose so that, the techie person has technical difficulties. It humanizes me. Anyway, challenge-based learning is sort of, in a nutshell, it's when project-based learning meets service learning. It's actually based in research from the Apple classrooms of tomorrow and the Apple classrooms of tomorrow are today. And what came out of it were that we found the best learning experiences that integrated technology and produced certain skills from our students of creativity and initiative, et cetera. What it required was a framework that allowed students to really examine the world, look at the problems, and then figure out ways to solve them. And so that's how challenge-based learning came out of it. There are elements of human-centered design in it. There are elements of service learning, like I mentioned. You never want, in project-based learning, you can have something like, you're going to Mars, what do you pack and why? And that's oftentimes what project-based learning is. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but when you think about what could I do to impact my community, what are some of the challenges, then all of a sudden it becomes much more personal. It becomes much more relevant. So CBL is something that has been something that Apple has utilized, but so have others. Digital Promise, which is an organization that brings together schools that are trying to really change what learning looks like. They actually recreated a guide on challenge-based learning, which is one of the best out there. And I'll be sure to put a link there. And yeah, our new Racial Equity and Justice Initiative actually is focused on using the challenge-based learning process to have conversations, and then how do you act upon it? How do you produce change? So it's an interesting thing because challenge-based learning now has been around for about a decade or more, and 15 years actually, and we're now coming back to it again, where people are starting to be interested because they want to be part of the change, be part of the solution.